Hello there, Gothamites. I am Brian Ward. I am here with Dr. Andrea Letamendi, and we are the Arkham Sessions, brought to you by Comics Alliance.
This is the podcast that takes a look into the psychology of Batman the Animated Series.
That's right. This week we are dealing with part 2 of Robin's Reckoning. Now, if you didn't hear last week's episode, part 1, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily imperative, but it is highly recommended because we get to see the origin story. Basically, everything you want to know about the origin of Dick Grayson.
Right.
Well, maybe not his origin, because that's when a mommy loves a daddy. But we get to see mommy and daddy Grayson get killed in a tragic accident because of an extortionist by the name of Tony Zuko. And then we get to see Bruce Wayne take in young Dick Grayson. But by night, he is Batman searching out Tony Zuko. Meanwhile, Dick Grayson is sitting at home, probably not being loved nearly as much as he should be. And Bruce only comes around toward the end of the episode.
But it will get better in time. For you.
But then we jump to present day, and that is when Robin discovers that Tony Zuko is back in Gotham City. Batman is trying to catch him before Robin can get to him. Robin goes out on his Robin cycle, and that is what brings us up to where we are right now.
Finally.
Now, Drea, we had discussed last week that you think Robin maybe is kind of in that nominal level, both as young Dick Grayson and as older Dick Grayson, in terms of his coping. Is that true?
Yeah, well, we certainly see that as Robin, he's developing into his own. He's still a young man, so he's experiencing some of this tension between him and Batman, and he's trying to gain independence, but also feels kind of not just shut down by Batman, but also he feels like he's being shut off by him.
Right.
That he's not being involved in what he considers really important missions.
He's not gonna ace me out.
A really important part of their work together.
Yeah.
So that's happening along with, as we know, this history of having experienced this tragic loss and trying to make sense of who is my family, who's important to me, who is a model for me, which is really, really interesting given what we're going to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, and Batman is basically trying to steal Robin's thunder in Robin's eyes. Batman is trying to get to Tony Zuko before Robin can. Robin doesn't like that because he feels like he should be given the opportunity to see Tony Zuko face to face and confront him for the first time since he was a child, because Zuko has been out of Gotham City. He left and now he is back and under an alias. But ultimately, Batman is potentially out to get Tony because, 7-8 years ago, when he first almost had a shot to get Tony, he let him get through his grasp. So it might even be a personal vendetta for Batman because Tony is the one that got away.
Right.
Tony might even symbolize for Batman the Joe Chill of his own parents' deaths, and the fact that Batman, as far as we know, never got Joe Chill. And this is an opportunity to sort of rectify that a little bit by actually getting the killer of Dick Grayson's parents.
Right, which is understandable when Robin believes that Batman is stealing his thunder.
Yeah.
As if he almost is in the understanding that Batman is trying to get this revenge himself and feel that finality or completion. He feels like Batman's going to get that closure, and he wants that closure.
Yeah. Well, as we brought up, he went off onto his Robin cycle, and we see that he's tracking the Batmobile. Batman is onto him. He knows that he's being tracked. He turns the tracking mechanism off.
I told you to sit this one out, Robin.
To which Robin replies,
You're a real piece of work, Batman. Okay, I'll find Zuko on my own, just like I did before.
Interesting. He has found Zuko before. And we get to see that flashback. We get to see that Bruce is bonding with Dick finally. He is out fencing there in Wayne Manor, teaching him a little something. And Dick actually makes a mistake, and Bruce explains that
It's finesse, not strength.
You don't necessarily have to be the biggest or the strongest. You just have to be able to use your wits, and you have to be able to use your finesse.
And I read that as, don't be impulsive, don't be too emotional, use logic, understand your opponent, and, use some of those future-oriented types of skills.
Right. Commissioner Gordon then comes over to the manor and explains to Bruce that he may not have to house Dick Grayson for too much longer.
Zuko's been spotted on the Lower East Side. Off the record, we hear he's trying to skip town.
How soon?
Could be tonight. This Batman's got Zuko real spooked.
Dick actually hears this exchange and decides to sneak out of Wayne Manor and track down Zuko on his own. And he's got the mugshot, and he's walking around Gotham City asking anyone and everyone if they know who this person is, whether it's a cab driver or if it's a shopkeeper. He wants to know, have you ever picked this person up? Have you ever served this person? And it's funny because we get to see that Dick is already kind of going into that detective / superhero mode that Batman is in. Even as a small boy, I think we said that it's possible that he's probably around 11 years old. He is doing the detecting by going out and sort of casing the streets, but there's an opportunity for him to save someone's life, potentially, there in the alleyways of Gotham.
Who do you think taught you how to grift, Chi-Chi? You don't go skimming money from me.
But I ain't, Lenny. Honest.
And he's presumably about to beat her senseless.
Yeah.
Dick Grayson gets in the way. This 11-year-old boy stops him, and he uses his acrobatic prowess, and the pimp is left embarrassed.
Yeah, he kind of kicks his butt.
Yeah.
But as you said, he uses his knowledge and experience from the circus to be able to take him down. And the woman, I mean, it's very clear that this woman is sort of like found this charming and acknowledges that he's a little kid, takes him out for a meal, and they have a conversation, and she's trying to understand what this little boy is doing out on the streets.
Yeah. And the waitress recognizes Zuko's photo.
Hey, I know that deadbeat.
You do?
Yeah, he's been here, always barking orders, never tipping. I seen him come from that building across the basin.
Dick goes after him. He goes to this abandoned building, sees Zuko through a window, and is nearly caught. Zuko finds him, recognizes him as the young member of the Flying Graysons, and says,
"The circus boy, my little material witness."
So he knows he's got the kid that can bring him down, and he's about to do away with him. But Batman, in, I might add, a much darker costume. He doesn't have the yellow emblem around the bat. He's got that full-chested bat. The gray is not the light gray. It is a much darker gray. The cape seems a little darker black. There isn't as much blue highlights as we're accustomed to seeing. This is a darker Batman for sure. Steps in, punches Zuko, and then Dick jumps in. He tries to attack Zuko, and unfortunately Zuko tosses him aside, and he falls into what seems to be a reservoir or a river. Regardless, he's going downstream.
Yeah.
Batman has to choose, do I take Zuko now, or do I go after Dick Grayson?
It's not even a choice. He immediately jumps into the basin to get Robin.
Yeah,
to get Dick, who's not yet Robin, but
right.
It seems like it's a no-brainer for him. He immediately goes after him and saves his life.
Yeah. So once again, Zuko escapes. This is the second time in, we don't know how long it's been that he's been with Dick, but it's been a little while because they're bonding now and they're fencing and all of that. He loses Zuko again, but rescues Dick. Now this seems to upset Dick.
No! You had him! You let him go! You let him! Why? Why'd you do it? Why?
As if to suggest, my life isn't important. You needed to have taken that guy down. Where is he coming from as this young boy wondering why he let Zuko go to save him? What's going through Dick's mind?
I mean, I think to some degree you're right that he's not valuing himself right now. He may even believe that he could have survived. He could have saved himself, and that Batman should have gotten Zuko.
Yeah.
In order to end this chapter.
Yeah.
That if it's left open, it's kind of what we talked about before. It continues to be left open. His wound is open.
Yeah.
And it may never end, right? So I think that's his way of saying, I'll never be able to recover from this, and it's because you lost your chance.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's blaming Batman. There's a lot of hate and pain there, and I think it's coming from a place of of feeling hurt and feeling uncertain about his own future and what this means for him.
Let's jump to present day. Robin is upset that Batman has the opportunity to catch Zuko, but as a young man, Dick, not knowing that Bruce Wayne was Batman, insists that Batman should have taken Zuko out when he had a chance. What has changed? Is it simply the knowledge of who Batman is? Is it the fact that he has been Robin and is now well-trained? Why is Robin upset now that he is not being given an opportunity that he was almost very happily willing to give Batman as an 11-year-old boy?
I think he truly believes that he can take him down himself. And remember, he's had all these years to develop that sense of needing revenge, right?
Yeah.
That has built up feelings of guilt, feelings of blame and shame. All these feelings have been built up inside of him. And he may believe that the only way that that's going to go away is if he single-handedly, by his own hands, takes down Tony Zuko.
Yeah. In the past, Batman, after that event, takes young Dick Grayson to the Batcave and reveals himself. He removes the cowl.
Just that part.
Just the cowl. And he's not wearing a second cowl. For
once.
So if people have been waiting, unfortunately, the streak has come to an end. Batman is only wearing the one cowl. But he does reveal himself to young Dick Grayson. Now, something that I find interesting here, and I don't know how Dick took it, but certainly the first thought in my mind was a little sinister, and that is that Alfred witnesses Bruce revealing himself to Dick Grayson and actually says,
I take it Master Dick's visit will now be indefinite?
Is that a threat?
No.
Is that like, you now know who I am? You can't leave here, kid? Like, it sounds a little sinister to me. I don't know.
That's how they welcome someone into their family.
Right.
And Bruce acknowledges that. He actually says,
This is where I work. You're the second person to see it.
Since Alfred obviously knows about it.
I want to know just how badly you want Tony Zuko.
This is a turning point, right? This is where Dick begins his training as Robin.
Yeah. I am willing to train you if you are really serious about taking this on.
Which is interesting because we've seen before this moment, they've been fencing, they've been interacting in other ways. I wonder if Bruce had already thought of these things. Is this kid going to grow up to be like me? Should I start to train him to fight? Should I teach him self-defense? Should I teach him some of these skills and some of these philosophies that I know?
Maybe. I don't know. It's funny that you mentioned that, because to me, I sort of got the sense that Batman had not acknowledged Dick as a potential partner. He was simply going to catch Zuko himself, and he was going to close that chapter in young Dick Grayson's life. And he probably would have let Dick go if Dick had not snuck out of Wayne Manor, tracked down the villain himself, and actually tried to fight him. I think at that moment, Bruce probably saw a lot of himself in Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
And I think as far as the bonding situations go, what else does Bruce Wayne know? I'm not sure, like, does he play checkers with Dick? No, probably not. Dick Grayson is a kid who is used to adrenaline. He was raised in a circus. He was raised walking the tightropes. What do you do with a kid like that? You put him in fencing gear and you do dangerous things with him, or you do little fighting scenarios. I don't know. I think it was almost probably a way to bond, but you could be right. He could have already been seeing this as a possibility and just sort of maybe almost to find his foundation, his baseline. Where are you in the fighting realm? Like,
yeah, and I think I'm also thinking about the idea that regardless of what's happening with Tony Zuko, Dick Grayson had lost his parents in a very similar way, i.e., he witnessed them die.
Yeah.
And he actually knew that they were killed by somebody.
Yeah.
That was not an accident. It's what we say, what psychologists call interpersonal types of trauma, meaning it was person-driven, that somebody else is responsible for the death of his parents.
Right.
Now, Bruce had a very similar experience, so I wonder, in his mentorship of Dick Grayson, is he thinking about some of those, I don't know, concerns or worries about, is this kid going to end up like me? Is he going to have nightmares like I had? Is he going to have these self-doubts like I have? Is he ever really going to connect with other people? Because I have trouble with that.
Right.
So I wonder if he's, again, regardless of the Tony Zuko situation, as he's mentoring him, is he thinking about some of these, concerns regarding Dick Grayson's upbringing and who he's going to be as an adult, given that they shared very similar experiences as children?
Once again, we jump to present day, and Zuko explains to his men that Batman, for some strange reason, is after him. He firmly believes that the Batman has his number and that he is after him for a specific reason.
You don't know the Bat. He don't let up. He's a dark angel of death, man, and he wants me.
So I find it, we actually had a great question by a listener about this moment, because Zuko is incredibly paranoid and actually takes a Tommy gun, hears something on the roof or above them and on the ceiling, and begins violently shooting into the ceiling. And we find that it's not actually for bad reason, because sure enough, Batman comes crashing through the ceiling and he's injured. We don't know if he shot him or if he simply got hurt in the fall, but Batman is not himself. He's not ready to take on these guys. So he uses a gas pellet and gets out of there and ends up splinting his own leg. But he realizes that he is incapacitated. He is down for the count currently. I can't take Tony Zuko on right now.
Yeah.
One of our listeners, Raymond, sent in an email and simply said, Zuko, paranoid that Batman has been hunting him down for the past so many years, machine guns the ceiling of his hideout, resulting in him actually disabling Batman. It's an instance where paranoia was an actual advantage and maybe even rational. After all, there is the expression, you're not paranoid if they really are out to get you. So my question is that true? Is he being rational in the given circumstances, or is he delusional? Either way, what is going on in his head? I don't know. He's not really paranoid. He's sort of been given the tip-off that Batman is in fact after him.
I think, and he even says that he's been watching his back for several years. I think he said 8 or 9 years he's been watching his back because he knows Batman is going to come after him.
Which makes our math pretty accurate earlier in the last week.
So is he actually paranoid? No, I mean, he's not showing signs of some kind of break from reality or believing in something that just isn't possible. And we know that factually Batman is pursuing him.
Yeah.
And prior to the scene, there may have been some kind of tip-off or some information that he's gotten. What is striking, though, is his very haphazard, violent, destruction of the ceiling when he takes that machine gun and kind of goes at it. And it's interesting that the animators kept that scene for so long that, he doesn't just take it down for a second or so.
That gun keeps going a long time. It goes back
to him, and it keeps showing him for kind of a prolonged period of time, just pointing the gun in the same spot and, shooting. I realize that's how machine guns work, but
well, they don't necessarily work for that long. Like, they gave him an extended clip.
Yeah.
But
and the expression on his face, I think there's a deliberate way that the animators had him look very fearful. This isn't someone with confidence at that moment. He's very fearful, rageful, a little bit out of control. But once we see Batman fall through the ceiling, he then gets confident. Points the gun at him. It's as if his irrational beliefs have been confirmed.
Yeah.
Which, in that case, I think there's some truth to what this listener is saying, that once there's once there is reality-based evidence that some of these beliefs could be based on, is this really a delusion? Or is this really some kind of paranoid episode?
Yeah. He's been validated. And he almost takes it out on Batman. He pulls the trigger, and unfortunately, he's out of ammo. Batman escapes, and like I said, splints his leg outside, but Zuko actually sends his men after him. He realizes he has the upper hand. He sends his men after him. He also goes after him.
There are so many abandoned amusement parks and
and piers, and Gotham is certainly just this dilapidated
how many
city.
Carousels? How many abandoned,
maybe it's the same
dysfunctional carousels are there in Gotham City?
I think I've always just assumed it was the same amusement park. It's the same one that the Joker sort of takes over and be a clown. It's the same one that
they should really just kind of
Why doesn't Bruce Wayne just buy that amusement park?
He probably owns it.
Rebuild it and turn it into a functional, operational amusement park. Bring a little joy into the lives of Gotham City, but at the same time, make it so that it's a lot more difficult to take this and use it as a hideout.
Yeah.
But regardless, they go and they're hanging out in this amusement park. Batman is hiding in various locations, and as we've often seen, he methodically takes down the thugs one at a time. Zuko is given the opportunity to sort of corner Batman, and that's when Robin, on his cycle, actually grabs Zuko and drags him down a pier. Mm-hmm. Basically puts distance between Batman and them. He wants Zuko alone. Yeah. Batman has created not only a splint, but a makeshift crutch.
At this point, he wobbles up with the crutch.
Yeah.
But we see Robin multiple times. He's throwing and punching Zuko against the pier railings.
Yeah.
And it's happening multiple times, and you get the sense that here's this increase in rage and an increase in hatred, and he's almost kind of like a cat playing with the toy at this point, just kind of repeatedly knocking him around and needing to get all these words out. Like, here's his moment to express all the pain he's been in to the person that caused him this pain. So it's really quite sad, but it's also at the same time, you get the sense that he needs to get all this out. So it makes sense.
So there's this moment that I found to be particularly fascinating, and that is as he's holding Zuko, and he actually thrusts him over the edge of the pier, and basically he could drop him and probably kill Tony Zuko. His voice goes low. It goes dark.
You're through, Zuko. Forever.
That's so, birdie boy. Huh?
I've waited a long time.
He sounds like Batman. He has put on the deep, dark Batman voice. He is no longer, "Hi, I'm Robin." It's, "You're done, Zuko."
Yeah.
And he's about to take him. And that's when Batman steps in and says,
"Enough. You can't let your emotions get the best of you."
Robin has a response, says,
"Stuff your advice, Batman. You and your stone-cold heart. You don't know how I feel. How could you?"
This is why the show won an Emmy, because in that moment, Batman doesn't respond. He just sort of, they share
gives him a look.
Yeah, they share this exchange, this nonverbal exchange, as if to say, you know that I would understand. I'm probably the only person that you know that would understand.
And it's clearly pointing out that Robin is out of his mind right now.
Well, he's not out of his mind. He's just filled with so much hatred and rage and pain that this is the only thing that will make that go away. He believes, I really think he believes this is the only thing that's going to make all those years of pain go away.
But I also think there's a moment where he doesn't realize he's talking to Batman anymore. Like, clearly he knows Batman has suffered tragedy. He knows that his parents were also killed. I think there's a moment, even from just the faintest of moments, I think Robin forgets that Batman is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, of
and
course.
that his parents were killed in Crime Alley.
Well, I think part of that silence, too, was that Batman couldn't say,
Yeah.
well, as Bruce Wayne, you would know that my parent,
Yeah.
that would kind of give it away. But yeah, I think you're right. And, we've talked about masks before. Batman wears a bigger mask than Robin does, but he certainly wears a mask that hides his face, and you can't see his facial expressions all the time. And it was designed to instill fear. And I think that you're absolutely right that for some moments, Robin is going to disconnect from Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And he's interacting with Batman.
One of the things that I love about this particular moment is that in any other cartoon of this time or before this time, it's very possible that Robin would have simply broken down and apologized and handed Zuko over to Batman. This is a great moment because Robin does in fact apologize. He says he is sorry to Batman. Clearly he knows he was in the wrong. But then he looks back at Zuko and he is still struggling with the idea of not dropping Zuko off the pier.
Yeah.
And you see the fear in Zuko's face. You see the police coming around the corner in their cars. They have got the opportunity to take Zuko in once and for all. And Robin still finds it hard not to kill Zuko. He finally tosses him back into the pier, and you realize that Robin is over it. They take away Zuko, and Robin looks to Batman and says,
You were right, not bringing me along. You knew I'd take it too personally.
It wasn't that, Robin. It wasn't that at all. Zuko's taken so much, caused you so much pain. I couldn't stand the thought that he might take you, too.
How did you take that? Because I have a very clear hypothesis, if you will, about this moment. How did you take that statement, I couldn't stand the thought that he might take you too?
Well, my first reaction was Bruce Wayne is obviously connected with someone. It's as if he's finally found a family. And the idea that this person would be taken away from him. And Tony Zuko is a very violent, he's not even a villain. He's just this, he's this antisocial, violent man. He probably would kill Robin if he had the chance. He's very different than the villains that we're typically dealing with.
He's even scarier than a mercenary, because a mercenary takes money to kill someone else. This guy will kill you if you don't pay him.
And I think, again, going back to that really violent scene where he's taking that machine gun and just, going at it, I think that's meant to instill fear in us, just to let us know, he would totally kill Batman. He would kill this kid. He would have killed him when he was, 11, 12 years old. He totally would have.
Yeah.
So I think that Batman knew that. He knew the seriousness of this particular violent man. He knew what he was capable of. He really didn't know if he was going to lose this very important person in his life. So I found that when he said that, it was kind of about, I finally have a family and I don't want that to be taken away from me again.
Right.
How about you?
I want to hold on to it for a minute because it's something I want to talk to you about for a little while. And first, I want to discuss these two episodes. Robin becoming Robin and so on. What was your take on this from a psychological point of view? Is it okay to put Dick Grayson in the home of Bruce Wayne, now knowing that Bruce is Batman, and that, you know, you've got this dark figure who fights crime illegally, mind you, now raising this boy potentially to become a crime fighter himself? There's so many questions I have about this episode, but tell me what you thought.
Well, last week we talked about the opportunity that may have been missed of Robin being raised by the community in the circus, right? That those are probably, they were almost members of his family. They were people that knew him and, you know, potentially didn't have the lifestyle that someone like Bruce Wayne / Batman would have. And I think this is probably one of the biggest questions when it comes to the Robins, right? Is Bruce Wayne the best father figure or mentor for small boys? Is he going to influence them to become just like him? And when you have a character like Dick Grayson, who we know experienced the same childhood trauma that Bruce Wayne did, it raises a lot of questions about, you know, is Bruce Wayne the best person to mentor him because he's had the same experience? Or is he the worst person because we see how he's dealt with it? We see how he's disconnected from, you know, from people, how he hasn't developed an adult relationship with a life partner, how he's isolated, how he still deals with his parents' death, how one might say he hasn't fully recovered from it. Is he the best person? And I don't know that I have the best answer for that, but I feel as though it's important to recognize that because Batman has, let me put it this way, because Batman still struggles with his recovery, he may be more insightful about what Robin may need in order to begin that recovery process sooner.
Well, up to this point, we certainly see validation in that. We see that Robin seems to have recovered much better than Batman ever has, or that Bruce Wayne ever has, and that Bruce as Batman is always considerably darker, always thinks the worst of people before he thinks the best of people. Meanwhile, Dick Grayson is in college. He's got healthy relationships with friends. He is a crime fighter in his free time, but it doesn't define him. He isn't just milling about throughout the day and fighting crime at night. Dick Grayson, even until he hears the name Tony Zuko, Dick seems better equipped psychologically and emotionally than Bruce Wayne. Even if we go so far back as Christmas with the Joker. Dick is in crime fighting mode along with Batman, but acknowledges that it's Christmas Eve and that other people are out enjoying their families and enjoying the time they have with loved ones. He doesn't think there's going to be a lot of crime that night. Well, unfortunately, it turns out he's wrong, but he seems to be the opposite. At this age, he thinks better of people before he thinks the worst of them. So he does almost seem to be, I don't know, he seems to have dealt with the loss of his parents better. Is this because of Bruce? Or?
Well, and some people have told me, you know, well, obviously, any of the Robins, Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, that obviously they would be doing better because they have Bruce. And Bruce had no one. Well, Bruce had Alfred, but Alfred wasn't really, didn't have that mentality that Bruce Wayne has. And I think I just want to caution that it's not just having an adult figure to provide parental care, to provide those basic needs. And it's also not just someone who's had the same experience. I think that, you know, we should explain that there's a more complex type of learning that occurs from caregivers, that we just can't simply say, well, it's just that somebody had an adult to take care of them. Much more is needed to help a child recover from trauma. Something that this episode makes me think about is social learning theory. Have we talked about social learning theory before?
I don't believe so.
We may have talked about the Bobo doll experiment. Do you remember that?
I don't know if we've talked about it on the show. We may have. I think you and I have spoken about the Bobo doll at some point.
Just like on weekends, we talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, hey, let me tell you about the Bobo doll. And I think it is something also that I learned in one of my psychology classes.
Yeah, it's another one of those really well-known, well-cited studies. Again, from the 60s, which is when a lot of different types of social psychology and social learning experiments were going on.
And you guys in that time period didn't really need a whole lot of financing for studies because, imagine you go to a toy store, you buy a Bobo doll for, 50 cents? And then you've got a lifetime of research right there.
There are a lot of hours of research you can do. The Bobo doll is actually like, I would say it's probably like 4 foot, almost 5 foot.
It's kind of like the Weeble Wobbles.
Yeah.
It's those punching bags that fall over, and the Bobo doll was a clown, if I remember. And you punch it, it comes back up.
Yeah. Nowadays, I think we would see like it would be Optimus Prime or, Homer Simpson or something. I don't know that I've ever seen the Bobo doll as a clown in this era. But that was apparently a popular toy back in the 50s and 60s.
People like punching clowns.
Apparently.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I think that's actually why there are so many fears of clowns is you punch them and they just come right back up.
That would explain
and they're
a lot.
Smiling.
The kids that maybe grew up in the 60s, are adults now. And
yeah, Stephen King had a Bobo doll, I'm sure, pushed it over a lot. It kept coming back and smiling at him. And he's like, I've got to write a book about this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
You were talking about the experiment.
So Albert Bandura was a psychologist at Stanford University and was very interested in looking at the development of aggression in young children. And at the time, again, there was a lot of research that was kind of trying to explore how children were learning pro-social behaviors as well as aggressive, more antisocial and possibly violent behaviors.
So is this similar to like a nature versus nurture? Like would
Somewhat.
the kids know versus are they taught?
Yeah. Well, one of the big questions was whether the environment simply shaped the child or whether that child also had some interactive role with that process. And of course, now we know it's a more complex process. It involves the environment, the individual child, their interaction together, and the idea that, yes, while the environment can shape the behavior of a child, that child's behavior also shapes their environment in the decisions that they're making, the relationships that they're forming. So again, we now understand it as a very complex process. And back in the 60s, the biggest question was, are children learning aggression because they're seeing it? Specifically, are they seeing it in the media? Now, at the time, that's through mainly TV shows. But also they were wondering if aggressive parents were raising aggressive children. So Dr. Bandura decided to do this research study where children were basically exposed to an adult of the same gender, I would say assaulting a Bobo doll in various ways. So demonstrating aggressive acts toward the Bobo doll, punching it, kicking it, pinning it down on the floor and punching it, in its face. And, they were interested to see if the children that were exposed to that were more likely to engage in those same behaviors when they had an opportunity to interact with the Bobo doll.
So what they saw was potentially funny to them and fun, and they recreated it. I imagine if you watch a clown weeble over and then come back up, and the parent or adult is just keeps punching and kicking, the child would then want to do it. They're not necessarily acting out against the clown,
right,
but they're wanting to also participate in that
right.
behavior.
Well, you're raising some questions that later came as a form of criticism toward this study. That was this really showing that kids develop aggressive behaviors because they saw an adult do it, or are they just kind of mimicking for playtime, for fun? Is it that they didn't really experience that as aggression because that plastic inflatable thing is not another human being? Mm-hmm. Would that carry over to their behaviors with other humans, other kids? And so, of course, there were some questions that were raised following it, but the study is remembered because it is one that showed the importance of modeling, that children will imitate and act in the same ways as an adult who's behaving in a certain way. And that if they're acting aggressively, if that adult model is acting aggressively, that child is going to pick up on those behaviors and in turn act aggressively towards others.
So it's the model of I was raised in an abusive household, therefore I could end up being an abuser myself.
Yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. And so, again, as we know now, there are more complex explanations of the development of aggression in children. There are some studies that look into TV shows and film and try to draw some correlations between violence in that medium and violence among youngsters. There isn't a plain basic answer to this, that simply watching something violent or playing a violent video game, that in and of itself doesn't necessarily lead to violent behavior. And that's good, because that means that for children that have been exposed to something violent, we know that that doesn't automatically lead to their own violent antisocial behavior. But it's bad in that we don't quite understand the complexity of that relationship between violence in the media and our own cultural violence,
right,
in the way that that's expressed. So, to answer some of your questions, it depends on what that child is predispositioned to be inclined to do or not be inclined to do. So that individual psychology takes a huge, that's a huge piece of this. It is also what happens to the people that are acting in violent and aggressive ways in media. Are they being punished? Are they seen as the bad guys? Do we actually see them, receive some kind of consequence? And in that way, is there some kind of like what we call vicarious reinforcement? Oh, I saw that was really bad, but I'm not going to do that because
right,
I'm seeing that they're getting into trouble.
Right.
Or, oh, that person's really bad, but it's my understanding that that's a bad person. And so I shouldn't be like that person because nobody likes him or her. Right. So those are some just basic explanations. But again, it raises some important questions that we're even dealing with now in the gaming culture, that people are realizing that there are a lot of violent, hugely horrific types of things that happen to characters, specifically female characters in some video games, and how that is impacting the people that are playing those games and the people that are maybe not playing those games but are involved with those gamers in IRL, real life.
Okay.
So, this is a bigger conversation, and there are other places on the internet where this is explained in a much better way. But it, again, raises issues about there should be some importance placed on how we learn behaviors, especially aggressive behaviors, and that there is a process involved in that, modeling of, especially during childhood, of seeing an adult behave in a certain way, especially if you know that adult, especially if that adult is your parent, and learning from those experiences. And again, that can go directly back to our TV experiences. That's why commercials are so effective. I see someone drinking a Coke with their name on the bottle. I'm going to try to look for my name on a bottle because I want to be that cool.
Yeah.
I'll never find my name on a bottle of a Coke.
Oddly enough, Andrea is hard to find on a Coke bottle. So is Brian, though.
Weird.
I have not found a Brian or an Andrea on a Coke bottle. And by the way, you're supposed to share it with Andrea or share it with Brian. So if you find one with my name on it, you got to share it with me. That's how it works.
I didn't realize there was sharing involved.
Yeah. Well, it says on the label.
Oh, it does.
Share a Coke with Andrea.
Oh.
Share a Coke with your BFF or whatever.
I always thought that meant that I was the star, or I was the BFF, or I was, whatever the label said.
Yeah, you are, as long as that person gives it to you. It's a little weird if you, Andrea, buy a Coke that says share it with Andrea, and then you're like, here, Andrea, I'm sharing it with you.
Wait, can we
little self-love.
Can we even mention Coke? Maybe we should stop saying Coke so much.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. We should totally say Coca-Cola instead. Trademarked, registered.
And this is why cigarette ads are so effective and have been so effective, and why there are actually laws against certain components of cigarette ads because of that modeling process that happens.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Robin and what's going through him in terms of all of these emotions that have built up over these years, he seems to sort of have pushed them aside until he discovers that Batman is going after his guy. Is this jealousy? Is it sadness? It seems to be anger, but I mean, how would you perceive this?
I mean, I think it's all of those things. But for someone to have watched the episode and then turn around and say, like, oh, Robin's really gone off the deep end, or he really sounds like he's an antisocial person now, or he'll never be the same again. I think we have to kind of take a step back and realize, yeah, he got very upset. He got very hostile. He was saying words both to Zuko and to Batman that were really hurtful and full of hatred. But it goes back to that idea that we've talked about before regarding primary and secondary emotions.
Oh, right.
When we experience emotions that may be too painful for us to tolerate immediately, things like reminders of trauma, so feeling pain, feeling shame, feeling guilt. I mean, especially for Dick for not initially grabbing Tony Zuko. And taking him down that time when he had the chance. He probably feels an enormous sense of guilt and self-blame. And probably, again, feeling sadness and feeling huge loss or feelings related to loss because of his parents' death. And because those emotions are difficult to deal with, he may then turn to feelings like anger and hatred and
so
going
he's
after
replacing
people.
the more complex emotions with the more base emotions that are easier to get out at that moment.
Well, I wouldn't say that some are more complex than others, but there are some theories that some of the more basic emotions that are natural for us to feel make us more uncomfortable. And that we do rely on, we kind of go to another emotional process in order for us to kind of ignore some of those more painful but basic emotions. So when he's going after Tony Zuko and he's knocking him around and he's yelling at him, I mean, it's an outlet, it's a way for him to kind of to get his anger out. But it may be ineffective in that what he's not doing is dealing with the extreme sadness and the feelings of loss and the feelings he has about himself. And how he feels about his own value and about the life that he can lead without his parents. So there are all these things that he could be addressing and could be processing, but it's too painful to do that. So he's kind of going toward, he's going toward the dark side, right? Going toward anger.
I like where you're going with that because it reminds me actually of something we talked about last week, and that is. At one point, I had said that something that you were talking about, the fact that Bruce Wayne looks to Dick Grayson and says, "It will get better for you," as if to suggest that it's too late for me. I had said that sort of reminded me of
Darth Vader
and Luke Skywalker, where Luke is saying, "There's still good in you, I can feel it," and Vader's like, "It's too late for that. I'm done." Now, by the end of Return of the Jedi, spoiler alert, we find out that he was actually right, that Luke did feel good in him and that Vader was not entirely bad, or rather that Anakin was not entirely gone. There was a little bit left in him.
Right.
This kind of goes to my hypothesis that I would like to posit to you.
So you're getting at the question that you posed earlier around Batman saying, it's not that Robin got too emotional, it's that he didn't want to lose him too.
Correct. Yeah, this is my hypothesis about this series. Now, I know that we'll probably never get the answer to it. But go with me on this.
I always do.
All right. I don't want to start with this episode. I want to take a couple weeks back with Perchance to Dream. Bruce Wayne is given the opportunity to live within his own imagination the greatest life he could possibly imagine. And yet the Batman shows up. And we had suggested at that time that was Batman realizing that there was a greater mission that he had to accomplish, that he could not live this perfect life. He would always be haunted by the Batman in some way, and that he always knew that even though he was giving up his parents and a wife and the potential for a family, he needed to be the Batman. The following week, we had said that there's a possibility that from Perchance to Dream, Batman was being a little bit of a dick because he had chosen the life a week earlier of Batman.
Yeah, like there was this residual kind of resentment around the choice that he made.
Which is why he might have been a little douchey. So he was sort of like, I chose Batman. I'm going to be Batman. I'm going to take down crime. Right. This is my mission. It was almost a reinvigorated mission. Mm-hmm. Then we get to Robin's Reckoning. And Batman goes looking for Tony Zuko. Now, we had also said that it's a possibility that Batman was looking for Zuko because he had at one point lost him. And now we realize that twice he lost him 7-8 years ago. I don't know that it's the subconscious that was haunting Batman during Perchance to Dream anymore. Because in this particular episode, and in these 2 episodes, Batman is so hell-bent on Dick Grayson not following the path of the Batman, being different. And as we said earlier, it seems to have worked because Dick seems to be a little healthier emotionally than Bruce Wayne. And now Robin is at a crossroads, much like Luke was, where you could pick up the hatred and you could strike me down and you could become the next Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. Or you could let that hatred go and you could become Robin, the best Robin that I know that you could be. And I'm determined to make sure it's that path. But ultimately, Batman acknowledges that it's Robin's path to choose, which is kind of where he went wrong in the first episode. He tried to take it upon himself, but really it was Robin who needed to have Tony Zuko over the pier.
He needed to make that decision on his own.
So I'm now starting to form the hypothesis that the Batman we saw in Perchance to Dream was not the subconscious, but was more of the guilt of the most horrible thing that Batman has ever done. And the inability to let that go. Like, Bruce, I'm not going to let you forget the worst thing you've ever done in your life. Because that would be too easy. That would be too good for you. You are going to remember, and I'm not going to stop haunting you. You are going to choose the life of Batman because you have to, for lack of a better word, repent. Mm-hmm. I am starting to get the impression that Batman may have caught Joe Chill. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to get the impression that Batman may have even killed Joe Chill at some point in time. Like the universe of Batman the Animated Series, I'm starting to get the very firm belief that Batman realizes the worst thing that he ever did was come face to face with his parents' killer, and maybe didn't pull back. Mm-hmm. And we start to see Robin on that brink. Yeah. And Batman is like, don't do it. And I think that might actually be where the line sort of comes in at the end when he says,
Zuko's taken so much, caused you so much pain. I couldn't stand the thought that he might take you, too.
In other words, he might take Dick Grayson away from me and away from the world. You might become me. So when he told Dick that it would get better for him, but not for Bruce, it could be because I've made a mistake.
Because he can't undo that. And,
right.
You know, if what you're saying is true, that he's murdered Joe Chill, that is something that goes against his moral sense that goes against who he is as Batman, and it goes against his mission had nothing to do with murder.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know at what point that would make sense where he would have found Joe Chill and murdered him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into Man of Steel, but does it happen early on in his development as Batman, in which he can learn from those mistakes, or does it happen later on when he's just completely lost control, or something related to who knows, a sense of darkness and resentment that he's developed over the years and hasn't gotten away from, and really kind of went over the edge, so to speak. So I think that's certainly a possibility. And it makes this, I mean, again, these 2 episodes are so dark and so serious. You don't have those quips and those jokes that Batman makes. You don't even have the occasional smile, where he cracks a joke at the end. All these things that make this cartoon entertaining and lovable. Now this is an entertaining and lovable show in another way. But, I think that there is this implication that Batman has gone down a path that he hasn't spoken about. Yeah. But it sort of allows him to realize that Robin is in danger of developing into a person like he. And so his first duty, his number one priority, is to prevent that from happening. And I think this goes to what, a lot of fans of Robin's story, whether it's Tim Drake or Jason Todd or Dick Grayson, that supporters of the idea that Batman is a good mentor have that theory that he is the best person to guide any Robin, because he will ensure that they do not become like him. Yeah. And it's not, he doesn't recruit them so that they become another Batman. He takes them under his wing to ensure that they don't grow up to be like him.
Right. And certain interpretations of Batman have been actually just the opposite, where there has been the sort of understanding that Batman is actually trying to bring up new Batmen. Yeah. And in this particular case, this is why we focus on only Batman the Animated Series and not some other writer's interpretation. Last week you brought up Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin. There's a reason why Bruce Wayne takes Dick Grayson in Batman the Animated Series and not Batman chucking Dick Grayson into the Batmobile and forcing him to dine on rats in the Batcave to toughen him up a little bit the night that his parents were killed. Right. And I think the animated series is a great way of doing this, because we're actually seeing a Batman who is trying to steer Dick Grayson into a better path. Yeah. You will become a better hero than I.
Right. It just makes more sense.
Yeah. I love these 2 episodes. I can absolutely see why Part 1 especially won the Primetime Emmy Award. And I'm really happy that we got to cover these as 2 separate episodes where we got an opportunity to really go into some great psychology. Yeah. Next week, we are dealing with another fan favorite episode, The Joker and Harley Quinn, once again in one of my favorite episodes, The Laughing Fish. And it's another one written by Paul Dini. So, excellent. Yeah, and directed by Bruce Timm. So, it's going to be fun all around. Until then, Drea, tell the fine folks where they can find you on the interwebs.
My website is underthemaskonline.com. I am on Twitters. My handle is @ArkhamAsylumDoc. Where can folks find you?
They can find me on the Twitters as well. I am @bward028. You can also tweet us both at Arkham Sessions. You can email us, arkhamsessions@gmail.com.
And I just want to say thank you to Comics Alliance, who has this episode on their site 2 days early. You can find them on comicsalliance.com.
You can also find them at Comics Alliance on Twitter. If you like what you're hearing, definitely subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you pick up your RSS feeds. But if you just can't wait, Comics Alliance actually shares the episode a couple days early via their YouTube channel. So go subscribe to their YouTube channel and you can get an entire Arkham Sessions playlist right there. So definitely go check them out. Check us out. Leave us comments. Leave us your ratings and reviews. Let us know what you think of the show. We like to listen. Until next week with The Laughing Fish, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And we are
The Arkham Sessions.